In the previous video in this series, we took a look at our current server configuration, including this server, the domain controller, our existing Exchange 2003 server, plus one of our workstations. And we began the setup of our Exchange 2007 by making sure that the first couple steps were done. So we're now ready to click the link for Install Microsoft Exchange. Once you click that, it'll take it a few minutes to warm everything up, to get setup initialized, and to do some initial preliminary work. Now, here's where a lot of people are going to wonder, are they going to have to choose between Exchange 2003 and Exchange 2007 and some different options? Well, actually, no. The main thing that's going to happen is it's going to install Exchange 2007 software on this server, because the Exchange 2000 software will communicate with your existing Exchange 2003 network, and it will utilize the information that's stored in the Active Directory. So, here on my first page I've got Welcome to Exchange 2007. We'll click Next. We'll agree to the licensing after we review it, of course, and make sure we're adhering to it. And click Next. We have an option to report to Microsoft any errors we encounter. We're going to choose No, not to automatically submit those. And we'll click Next. And we're going to choose to do a typical Exchange server installation, which will include the hub transport, client access services, mailbox server, and the Exchange management tools. And it's going to put it into the C drive, into Program Files, Microsoft Exchange Server. That's where it'll put all the files and everything it needs. So we'll click Next. This is about the only screen here that actually detects anything having to do with Exchange 2003, because it queried the Active Directory, and the Active Directory said, we already have Exchange installed. And so it said, okay, well, we're going to need to establish some connections between the new Exchange 2007 and the Exchange 2003. That's because the Exchange 2007 configuration is going to utilize a new administrative group. It's going to build a new admin group. It won't build the 07 server into an existing administrative group. It builds its own. So it's asking, how are we going to link these together? Because that requires the use of our routing group connector. So we need to browse and choose an existing Exchange server, and it will query and show you the list of your eligible Exchange 2003 servers that it can link up to. So I'm going to link it up to my Exchange 2003 server for the purpose of mail. So mail coming from Exchange 2003 network will pass to this server, and mail from this server and other Exchange 2007 servers will pass to EX 2003. So we'll go ahead and hit Next. And now it's going to do some prerequisite examinations. And we may or may not have gotten everything necessary. I think there's actually one more piece missing from my server here that's likely to kind of catch a lot of people off guard because it's not in a lot of the documentation. So I've left it in on purpose. Okay, first thing, it's going to make changes to our Active Directory schema. That's reasonable. It's taking a look at the hub transport role, and actually everything's good. It's looked at the client access role, and everything's good. And it's talking about mailbox roles. We might have a little bit of trouble unless we make sure that we replicate free busy information to all of them. Okay, well, nothing there is a showstopper. What I was expecting to see, and I must have already done it on this server, was there's a Dotnet Framework Fix that has to be loaded. Under Add Remove Programs, I'm used to getting a prompt under here. Let's see if it's already loaded. Ah, it is already loaded. I'm used to getting a warning that we need to load a certain security update for the Dotnet framework. But it looks like this server's been patched with IE7 and all the current Windows updates. So it's all set. Great. Okay, so we're now ready to start the installation of Exchange. Now, I'm not going to bore you by showing you the whole setup part here because it takes it about an hour. So what I'm going to do is click Install, let the installation start, and then at the very end I'll bring back up the video. So we'll just skip this whole part where it's going through the organizational prep, the Exchange file copy, the hub transport, the client, and the mailbox role. And hopefully when we return, we'll either be at the mailbox role, or if we hit any trouble in the middle, I'll resume recording audio for you. Well, it looks like we seem to have encountered an error during our installation. And to tell you the truth, this has actually happened to me a couple of times during the upgrade installation of a server when I'm going in with an upgrade or just a regular installation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how we go about completing the installation if it bombs out here in the middle. Because we really can't undo anything at this point because we've already started down that path. So it's telling us access to the path d:\setup server roles common 64 is denied. Let's see, that's our CD-ROM setup server roles common, and let's see, is there a folder here called 64? Well, there isn't a folder here called 64, so that could potentially be part of the problem. So somewhere in their installation code, it's looking for a particular folder. Now, that could be fixed in the release of the folder you have. There could be a file here that's supposed to be 64, but I'm not finding it. We've got, a number of different possibilities for the problem. And so what we've got to do is really click OK and see what happens. So let's do that. I click OK. We've got an unexpected error code, and Watson dumped it. And so it was not able to install the hub transport role, the client access role, or the mailbox role. It was able to do the organization prep and the copy of the Exchange files. So we're going to go ahead and say finish. And just like any other Windows install program, if it bombs halfway through the installation, start the installation again. And here we go. Wow, look, it's actually put us our Exchange installation into Exchange maintenance mode, where we can add and remove additional roles from the server. Because it's installed the management tools, they've been installed, and we need to tell it we need to do the mailbox and the client administration and let it complete the hub transport role. So let's go ahead and click Next, and we'll let the install proceed. I'll fast forward over this and get to the next either error message or a completion message for us, and we should be good. Hopefully at that point we'll have a working Exchange server. But this is the sort of thing that you only get to do your migration once, and if it screws or messes up in the middle of it, what do we do? So hopefully this video will give you an idea just in case you hit this error. Now if you don't, the end result is you're going to get the hub transport, the client access, and the mailbox roles all installed on your server, and you won't run into this same trouble that I did. But just in case, here we go. Okay, well our installation is done. I went ahead and installed the hub transport, the client access role, and the mailbox role. But because of the failure in the middle of the setup, we do have to go do one thing. And this is a good thing to check on just in case if your install went beautifully and you didn't get that hiccup. It's still a good idea to go check on this. What we're going to do is we are going to go over to the Exchange 2003 server, open up our Exchange management, and let's refresh under the admin groups. Now you'll see here that there's an Exchange administrator or Exchange administrative group, and there's the first administrative group. The first administrative group is where everything was before. This is where your old Exchange 2003 server is. And your new Exchange server is located under the Exchange administrative group, because this is the one that builds for Exchange 2007. In fact, the future of Exchange doesn't use administrative groups anymore because the management of the Exchange servers, there's no need in Microsoft's eye to have the total separation of building different administrative groups. They lump them all together for managing your Exchange servers. And when we look underneath the routing groups, because one question it did ask us when we installed the Exchange was where we wanted the connector. And you'll notice we don't have a routing group connector bridging these two routing groups together, which says they won't know how to pass email to each other. So what we have to do is we have to go and create one. I'm going to create it from the routing group container in the Exchange administrative group. And I'm just going to select New Routing Group Connector. We got an error here. Exchange System Manager version 8 is required to edit this object. See the About dialog. So doesn't want to let us create it from here, but now let's go down here and create it. And we say New Routing Group Connector, and we're going to connect this to the first Exchange. We're going to call this Exchange 2003 to 2007 Routing Group Connector. Any server here can send it, or we could specifically specify this server. And we can specify the remote bridgehead as being the Exchange 07 connector, or the Exchange 07 server, and we'll click OK. And now it will prompt us, do we want to create the routing group connector coming back? We'll go ahead and say yes and see what happens. There we go. We now have our Exchange 2003 to 2007 routing group connector. And when we go look up here, you now see we have the connector coming back the other way, where it's just built it with the reversed options. So we can't edit the object, but we can see what actually happened. This was built, and this would have been normally built automatically if we hadn't received that one error during our installation. But we can rectify that problem by installing that connector, and that's going to allow mail to flow between the two servers. So, back to our Exchange server, we've now completed step 1 of installing the framework, 2 management console, 3 PowerShell, 4 our Exchange server, and at this point we'd be ready to get any critical updates from Microsoft's website. And most likely by the time you're watching this video, there will be Exchange 2007 Service Pack 1 available. It's only in beta right now when I'm recording this, so we won't get a chance to load that on there. What we will have is a roll-up. And I'll save those for the next video.